Muy bien, pues muy buenos días. Regresamos nuevamente. Y bueno, quiero decirles que el día de hoy tenemos el gusto de recibir a la doctora Laetitia DaBlanc. Como ustedes saben, un tema que ha levantado bastante interés en México, en América Latina, que tiene que ver con las entregas instantáneas. La doctora DaBlanc, me voy a permitir leer un poco de su amplio currículum. La doctora Laetitia DaBlanc, pues ella es líder reconocida en el tema de logística urbana. Sus trabajos de investigación han tenido impacto fundamental tanto en la toma de decisiones públicas como privadas a nivel internacional y sobre todo, pues actualmente, para seguir impulsando este tema, ella es directora de investigación en la Universidad Gustave Eiffel y en el IFSTAR, que es el Instituto Francés de Ciencias y Tecnologías de los Transportes, de la Gestión del Territorio y de las Redes. Además, es miembro de Metro Freight, el cual es parte de la red mundial del Centro de Excelencia en Investigación para la Distribución Urbana, el BREF. Es también profesora asociada en la Universidad de Gotemburgo, en Suecia. Actualmente la doctora DaBlanc lidera la Cátedra de Investigación City Logistics de la Escuela Nacional de Puentes y Caminos en el campus Mar-la-Vallée, así como la Young Initiative de la World Conference on Transport Research Society. Sus áreas de investigación pues son el transporte de mercancías, la movilidad de las mercancías y el medio ambiente, así como la distribución urbana, políticas de transporte, igualmente que logística y territorio. Ella cuenta con un doctorado de la Escuela Nacional de Puentes y Caminos, así como una maestría en planeación urbana y regional por la Cornell University. En sus inicios, pues estuvo involucrada en temas económicos y análisis de políticas públicas en la prestigiada institución Sciences Po de París. Bueno, como ustedes saben, en el sitio del CILOG, ustedes pueden consultar su semblanza. Sobre todo los invitamos a que visiten los enlaces donde pueden consultar pues todo el trabajo que ella está haciendo y que tiene impacto a nivel global. Doctora DaBlanc, muchísimas gracias por estar el día de hoy con nosotros. Pues sé que en español me parece que sí me entiendes. También sabemos que la conferencia será en inglés, entonces, bueno, thank you very much for your conference this day in the CILOG. So, el micrófono es tuyo.
Gracias, Gastón. Entiendo el español, pero voy a hablar en inglés, que es más fácil para mí.
Gracias, sí, adelante.
Necesito el screen sharing, please.
Claro. Vamos a ver. Ok.
¿Todo bien?
Todo bien, muchas gracias, sí.
Ok, gracias a todos. Y I'm going to talk about on-demand instant delivery platforms. And I just want to give you a very brief, sorry, I'm arranging my screen. I want to give you a very brief presentation of the chair Logistics City. And I gave you the link on the chat, so please have a look. We put a lot of results on our research on this website. It's in English. And we also have a Twitter and LinkedIn, so we provide updates of the research. One important result is about the surveys we do on gig workers for instant delivery platforms in Paris. We've been doing that for 4 years. So now we have an analysis of the trends. So please go to the survey results if you want more details on what I'm going to tell you about Paris and instant delivery. Okay, so today I want to tell you about on-demand instant delivery, the companies and the business model. I want to talk a lot about gig workers' status and the labor disputes, because it's a key point today, including for the business model of the platforms. And I will briefly talk about the impact of this new business on real estate, micro hubs and urban warehouses. As you can see, what's not in my lecture is the consumer. So we don't have so many work on the consumer of instant deliveries, but it's a very important point, especially since the pandemic. So it's another side of research that also need to be taken into account. I just had a very brief conversation with Gaston on the platforms that were active in Mexico. And it seems that you have world platforms like Uber Eats. You have a Latin American platform like Rappi, but you also have Didi Food, which is a Chinese company. So it's very interesting for me to see that Didi is actually active in Mexico. So it's an interesting new information for me about the impact of these very big Chinese instant delivery platforms in other regions of the world. Okay, so what is an on-demand instant delivery service? Basically, it's a service providing deliveries in less than 2 hours. Okay, so quick delivery. It's a delivery service that is an interface. They're using platforms, digital platforms. Everybody is using a smartphone, and everybody is using algorithms. So key technological components of the definition of instant delivery. And the third part of the definition is that most of them are using self-employed riders, couriers, workers, right? We also call them gig workers because they are paid only when they do a gig. They are paid per delivery, okay? They are not employees. Most of these platforms deliver meals, prepared meals, about 80% of the business. But now there's a huge diversification into grocery, into general parcels, and into specific goods like medicine. Okay, so it's an extension, a diversification of the services, starting from food at the beginning, 5 or 6 years ago. Another interesting thing about these services is that it's very international. We saw Didi in Mexico. We see Glovo, which is Spanish, in Lima here. We see Foodora in Moscow and Stockholm. We see services in Buenos Aires. It's all over the place. It's in Africa. It's in Southeast Asia. It's in Australia. It's in Europe, of course. So these services are based on the same business model, the same technology, and they are all over the world. So it's a very important point. Probably the first time such a homogeneous service for fast delivery develops in all the cities around the world. It's also quite interesting as a new service because it provides a lot of jobs in city centers and in suburban areas. So a new provider of jobs and qualified jobs. So it can be an important part of the economy of a city, because these are new jobs for people who cannot find jobs in other sectors, for example, because they don't have degrees, right? So it's kind of an interesting development in terms of providing jobs in cities. So gig economy means these are self-employed couriers paid for each task. I have a few numbers here. So they represent an addition of 4,000 micro companies, which means one person, right? It's a one-person job every month in Paris in 2020. And that's twice as much as in 2019. So the COVID pandemic has doubled the number of gig workers in Paris for instant deliveries. It's a very, very big number. So today in Paris, between 30,000 and 50,000 couriers are working for instant delivery every day, more or less. Okay, this is Paris. But look at Meituan. Meituan is the largest company in China. at least 1 million couriers every day in urban China work for Meituan, independent couriers. Okay, so it's a gigantic employer now, huge number of jobs. Also very interesting is to look at the new modes of transportation that these people are using to make instant deliveries. So deliveries in cities, usually it's trucks and vans, okay? But now it's also cars, mopeds, cargo bikes, and bicycles, and even people walking and using public transport. So this is a totally different world of modes of transportation to make deliveries because of the introduction of the new on-demand instant delivery services. And these are not small numbers. Mopeds, tens of thousands. Cars, a little bit less in Europe, many in the US. Cargo bikes is a little bit less, but bicycles, an enormous amount of people using bicycles. Also scooters and public transportation. So it's addition to traffic in cities, okay? So it's quite important to look at the impact on transportation and mobility in cities. So I was telling you that these companies have become giant. So this is the landscape of businesses that you find in instant delivery. You have world brands, of course, Uber Eats and Amazon, because Amazon has the Prime Now and / Amazon Flex service. Amazon Flex is for people who are not professional transport companies and want to do gigs for Amazon and fast delivery. Very active in the US, very active in the UK. They are not introduced in Europe yet for legal reasons. You have big US brands such as Grubhub. Now it's Just Eat. It's part of Just Eat, which is European. You have Postmates, which has been bought by Uber Eats. You have DoorDash. Chinese brands are very big. Meituan, Eli, Didi Food. You have Latin American brands, Rappi, iFood in Brazil. You have big European brands. The biggest is Just Eat Takeaway. And then you have Deliveroo, you have Glovo, Delivery Hero. Also, you have a lot of domestic brands from startups becoming quite big. That's happening in everywhere. Indonesia, Nigeria, Sydney, many countries and cities around the world have local instant delivery platforms and startups. Quite interesting landscape of small companies becoming bigger, okay? Impressive numbers of growth, but also of losses. So Meituan was valued last June, $210 billion. Okay, that's not a mistake, that's a billion. So it's an enormous valuation. Of course, since then it has decreased because, you know, of the backlash of the Chinese government against some technology companies. But it reached $210 billion valuation. Postmates was sold to Uber, DoorDash, bookings in 2020 tripled compared with 2019 because of the pandemic. Another interesting number is the losses of Deliveroo in 2020, $300 million loss. Meituan lost nearly $800 million just in the first trimester of 2021, which basically means that they are losing 13 cents, dollar cents, to every US dollar they earn. Quite an amazing number, right, for losses. And another interesting fact is the IPO of Deliveroo on the London Stock Exchange. That was in last spring. So this introduction on the stock exchange was actually disappointing. And actually, and I will tell you a lot about that, the investors were quite hesitant over the business model, especially because of the litigation and the disputes over the status of workers. So we'll come back to that issue later. It's very important for the image and the IPOs of these companies today. Big discussion, the status of workers. Too much litigation, actually. Okay, so as I was saying, some darker clouds. Deliveroo IPO was disappointing. Cities in the US today are suing, the municipalities themselves are suing platforms over unfair business practices against couriers, but also against customers and against restaurants. So a lot of litigation, not only on the workers' status, but also on the way the platforms organize their relationships and the fees with the restaurants and the customers. And many strikes and demonstrations from the workers. So since 2017, different waves of demonstrations, especially in Europe, in big cities in the US, and increasingly in Asian cities. Seoul, Tokyo, even Chinese cities have seen a lot of demonstrations from couriers, and they get more media attention today. So quite an important point. Okay, so you can ask me now how they survive, because they're making so much loss. Okay, they're not making any profit, and they're losing money every year, even the big ones. But actually they do survive and they develop. So how does that happen? There are many different ways to survive and even to grow in this very competitive market of instant deliveries. You can merge, so you can buy competitors. So Takeaway bought Just Eat, and then Just Eat Takeaways bought Grubhub. Uber bought Postmates. That's one way of surviving, buying your competitors. Another way of surviving is making big partnerships with shippers, retailers, companies that have a lot to deliver. So Deliveroo in the UK is getting closer to Amazon. Postmates has partnerships with Walmart. Carrefour has partnership with Uber Eats, etc. So it's a big trend of getting closer to a big retailer so that you have guaranteed deliveries every day, okay? And then you can also try to share the markets. So your competitor will be bigger in one region, so you get out of the market. That's what happened in Latin America, that's what happened in Europe. Okay, the companies are, in a way, sharing the markets. You can also grow and survive by growing vertically. So that's what I was telling you about diversification. These companies are starting to diversify. It's not only food and meals, it's groceries and specific items like alcohol, medicine. So that's internal growth and diversification. But of course, the main way of surviving and growing is to keep getting money from your investors. That's, you know, a very famous name in venture capitalism. You have many other funds that are ready to keep investing in these companies because they know one of them will survive and will be very big at the end. So they keep investing. There's so much money on ready to be invested that these companies keep getting money from investors. Okay, so that's a very important point of course, to remember. But you can also do all these other things: merging, partnering, sharing markets, and growing by your own. Very recently, new formats have emerged for super fast grocery delivery. I don't know about Mexico, but I know about Europe. Many companies today are promising grocery delivery in 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And in China, you have Alibaba that promises to deliver grocery even in 5 minutes. So that's a crazy logistics behind, right? But it's happening. So at least 10 companies have invested, have entered the European market in the last 6 months. That's just a few names of them. Fast, super fast grocery delivery. It's actually a slightly different business model than a meal delivery. But the two worlds are merging right now. So they use dark stores because they need urban facilities to serve as urban warehouses for the products to be delivered very quickly. They have at least 1,000 or 2,000 SKUs, references of products, right? So they need to store these products in facilities. That makes it different from food delivery, which only needs to get to the restaurant. In that case, you have to store the goods. You need some small fulfillment facilities to store the references, the products. So that makes it quite different from Uber Eats or Rappi, for example. But it's happening and it's merging, it's getting closer to the companies I showed you before. We don't know yet the market share that they will reach in Europe, but as an indication, we know the market share that this very new market, the very new business has reached in China. So Chinese cities have about 5% of all online grocery market that is super fast, the 10-minute and 5-minute service. So 5% is not a big market share, but if you relate it to a very high overall food online market in China, it actually makes for many deliveries every day. So, but that's about the framework that you can think about. It's about 5% of all online grocery and food market, okay? So interesting, new, very new business. Okay, so now I want to tell you a little bit about the workers themselves, because as I was telling you, it's a key point in terms of the future of instant delivery. So much litigation, so much disputes over labor and the organization of work, that now it's a big topic for the platforms, for the governments, for the unions, and for the people working for this platform. So what we've seen, that's from our surveys in Paris and other local data that we could collect from other regions. But basically what happened for the past 5 years is that the workers for these delivery services have changed from students, they were the majority 5 years ago, to people doing that as a full-time job, sort of professional delivery workers for instant deliveries. 2, that's the most recent trend, and documented migrants, vulnerable workers. So for example, in Paris, we have a lot of sub-Saharan African and documented migrants working for Uber Eats and Deliveroo. In Latin America, as you know probably, lots of Venezuelan refugees in 2018, 2019 entered the market. In China, rural migrants have entered the market of instant delivery. So it's a massive way of integrating these people who cannot find any other type of jobs because you need papers, right, to work in more regular jobs. So it's really a big trend from students to full-timers to more sort of precarious, vulnerable workers. So why is that? It's linked to decreasing pay from the platforms. The bonuses, especially, have been decreased over the years. So 5 years ago today, the pay you get on working for these big platforms has decreased, especially because of the bonuses. The bonuses have been sometimes suppressed. For example, rain bonus in Paris doesn't exist anymore in many of these platforms. So I found a very interesting number for about the delivery fees in China. It's from a consultant report. So average price of the delivery fee in China today is 5 yuan. It's about 75 cents, as against 20 yuan just a year and a half ago. Okay, so very rapid decrease of what you earn when you do these types of jobs. So as a consequence, it attracts people who cannot ask for more. So huge supply of cheap labor, I would say. And it's related to this decreasing tendency of decreasing the overall pay from the platforms. Let's see what will happen today, because the situation today is very different, right? And when I'm saying today, I'm really saying about these last couple of weeks. It's been harder and harder to find labor force in logistics in general. So maybe it will have the opposite effect in terms of attracting people who ask for more pay because of this recruitment problem that you hear about in the US and in Europe. Recruitment problem, shortages of labor force. Maybe this will also have an impact on instant delivery. So we'll have to see what happens next. Okay, another thing that has been important is the working conditions. It has attracted a lot of media attention, and investors don't like that, right? So, for example, in China, there was a big case of a Chinese worker that set himself on fire. Actually, it serves as one of the justifications for the Chinese government to crack down on the big tech, on Meituan, on Ili.me, under antitrust examination and working conditions, okay? But it has generated a lot of media attention, not only in China, but also in South Korea, Japan, and Australia, very recently. Deaths of delivery couriers by overwork, etc. So it's an important dimension of the discussion today because it has direct impact on the valuation and on investors for these instant delivery platforms. So now they are paying attention. Okay, so many litigation, many legal disputes, and today there's case law, okay? Former disputes that have resulted into a sort of jurisprudence of the judges. So you have here a list of what happened in California and Europe. All of these cases, except the last one, were in favor of identifying gig workers as employees. So the judges are saying in the Supreme Court of California, in France, in Spain, in the UK, in Italy, basically the judges are saying that these people are not independent workers, they are actually employees, and that the companies, the platforms should reorganize their benefits. So it's an important legal issue, but it's only about cases. It doesn't make for legislation, of course, because it's case by case. And last example here is another judge. It's a lower judge. It's a court of appeal in the UK. But they decided that actually delivery platform workers were indeed independent. So you see that it goes back and forth in terms of looking at the status of workers, independent of the platforms or employees, because they are very dependent economically from the platforms. Again, it's a legal dispute, it's a legal discussion. I'm not a legal person, so I cannot give you what I think about the actual status of the workers. All I'm saying is that it's becoming a problem for the business, because these companies have to take into account all this litigation. They have to pay for lawyers. They have to organize ballot referendums in the US to reverse legislation and case law. So it has become a problem included in the business model. So lots of legislations and negotiations. For example, at the EU level, which is a very high level, you have today discussions for a new directive of the European Union setting a minimal set of benefits, whatever the status of the gig workers, employees or independent. But platforms will have to pay a minimum group of benefits. Many local legislations, such as in Spain, La Ley de Riders, Italy, there are many negotiations between the platforms, the unions, and the state. And California is a big story in itself. So there was the Supreme Court decision about gig workers being employees. Then there was the law AB5, organizing gig workers as employees. Then there was Proposition 22 in the last elections. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart paid for publicity to have their proposition adopted, and it was successful. But a California judge very recently said that Proposition 22 was unenforceable and unconstitutional. So the story continues, and more lawyers, and more lawyer fees, and more action to be taken by Uber, by Lyft, by DoorDash. Okay, so that's what I was telling you. It's part of the business model today because it's a big expense, legal expense for them. So they're taking initiatives to look nicer in terms of the way they treat riders, they treat couriers. For example, Uber in the UK has said that they will only employ workers, which is a sort of third category between self-employed and full employees. So they will pay minimum wage, vacation time. Of course, we're in Europe, so you need your vacation. They will pay retirement benefit. Okay, so all Uber workers will get minimum wage, vacation time, and retirement. Same in France, Just Eat and Cajou now use only employees, and they even advertise that as a marketing argument. So they are saying to the consumers, look, we're very nice, we're using employees, we are using employee contracts, we are not using gig workers. So it's a marketing argument, quite interesting. Glovo and Delivery Hero started this European initiative, big promotion of their business model. So they pay a lot of advertisement and marketing for looking nicer in terms of the work contracts. Another interesting development is another ballot initiative for a referendum for next year. It will probably happen. It's from Uber and DoorDash in Massachusetts. So they are advertising that they will guarantee $18 per hour, but the discussion is what they consider the hour. What they're saying is that the hour is defined as engaged time of the delivery person, which means that it's only the time when they are actually riding their bicycle or their motorbike to get the food or to deliver the food. So it's not the time when they are waiting for an order on the smartphone, right? So there's a discussion about it. The unions want them to pay for the hours when the workers are waiting, not only for the hours when they are actually engaged. Another issue that I want to show you is actually another issue for litigation, potentially. It's the way the algorithm is organized, okay? And there's a big case in Italy. The Data Protection Agency of Italy fined Glovo, a company owned by Glovo, which is called Foodinho, millions of euros over the way it's using algorithms for managing the delivery workers. Basically, what this decision is saying is that the algorithm of Glovo is too intrusive into the way the self-employed couriers are organizing their work. Okay, so looking at the algorithm, the Data Protection Agency said, okay, Glovo, you are intrusive, you are too much intrusive into the way your providers organize their work. And I think this will become a very important direction for future litigation, the way the algorithms are set up and the way they organize the work and they organize cutting workers from working with them because of bad reviews, for example. So quite an important development for the future. Okay, just one little focus on France. Obviously, I'm very involved in what's going on in France. I've been also working for some government specific missions on the topic. We were auditioning many of these companies, many of the unions too. So it was very interesting to get all this feedback from the stakeholders in instant delivery in France. So what is happening is that France is going the middle way. They are not legislating like in Spain, that the workers are employees, but they are not letting the platforms using independent workers as before. So they are legislating a little bit, I would say. So there's a social responsibility of platforms. They have to give insurance for accidents, and they have to give training opportunities. And then platforms can sign charters with the workers they are hiring. So there's a whole setup of templates for the charters. And then there were these governmental missions that I was part of. There were 2 of them recently. And they came up with this new legislation that will organize professional elections for representatives next year. And another interesting development is that all the platforms next year will have to provide activity indicators. They will have to give data on the time of the workers spend on the job and the income, the average income they are earning from making deliveries. So data sharing is becoming a key issue for the platforms in France because the law is asking the platforms to share data in the future. Another development in France and Europe is alternative delivery platforms, more social and environmental. for example, Urbit, working in London, Paris, and Sweden. They are advertising that they are treating their workers better. And also a lot of cooperatives working for psychologistics. But I won't go much into that, but just for you to know, these are alternative social models that are developing. It's a niche, it's very small in terms of volumes, but they are getting a lot of attention from investors because they look nice, especially because they treat workers better. So it's becoming a marketing advantage for them. I hope you don't hear too much background noise, but I'm sorry, I can't do anything about it. I'm in a big room. Okay, just a quick word on the surveys we're doing in Paris. As I told you, we're making surveys every other year, or now we're making surveys every year, and we have a big sample. So it's quite an interesting survey because we are very independent from the platforms, but we are making comprehensive samples. So we are actually looking at all the different workers working for the platforms. In 2021, we saw a big impact of COVID with many students coming back into the job on instant delivery. So that was the main impact of COVID in France. Lots of students came back on the job because they couldn't find jobs anywhere else. And also another impact was a further decrease in revenue from the job because of so many more workers supplying labor force to the platforms that actually they lost revenue and they lost time working for the platforms. So these are a few numbers from the recent survey. I'm not going to show you anything directly, but just a sample of the results. And again, if you are interested in all this data, it's all online. Let me go to another type of result. It's about the modes they are using to make deliveries in Paris. So again, this is survey for Paris only. It's not representative of the whole of Europe. It's representative of the big cities, Paris and probably London. So what's happening? Over the years, there's a huge drop in the use of bicycles. There's a huge increase in the use of mopeds, motorbikes, and even cars, private cars. All of this is not allowed to make deliveries in France if you don't have a specific freight license. So all these people are actually illegal. Even if they are documented workers, they are illegally using mopeds, motorbikes, and cars. It's a lot of these workers, right? Probably half of them, if you add mopeds, motorbikes, and cars. Another interesting development is the use of new modes, micro-mobility, so bike sharing, scooter sharing. So you see here the bike sharing scheme of Paris, the Vélib. Many delivery workers are using the Vélib because it's very cheap. And they're also using scooters, shared scooters, very important in Paris now as a mode of mobility. So the delivery workers are using these new modes. And actually, they're not allowed to use them, which is a strange legislation from the bike sharing schemes. They are saying that you are not supposed to use bike sharing if you want to do a commercial activity such as a delivery. I'm not sure if this is legal actually, but that's what is written in instructions when you use bike sharing in Paris. You're not supposed to do any commercial activity, but many of them are doing it anyway because there's little enforcement of this regulation. a few operational and financial indicators. Again, that's from the survey in Paris, 2021. So one delivery worker makes, in average, 18 deliveries a day. They cover 42 kilometers every day, and nearly 30% of them work more than 8 hours a day. Very long hours. In a week, they can reach 60, 70 hours. But there's the engaged type and the time when they are just waiting for the gigs. So there are two very different types of time you spend on the work. But in total, it can reach 70 hours a week. So about the earning, 40% are satisfied with what they earn, 60% are not. And this is changed from last year. Because of the COVID, as I told you, many more people are working for these platforms. So they lost revenue because they don't have as many gigs as before. So 40% earn less than 1,000 euros and 40% earn less than 1,500 euros. Okay, so overall 80% earn less than 1,500 euros a month. Euros is a little bit higher than dollars. So in some cases, it's a good salary, but in many cases, it's not a good salary if you compare with the very high number of hours that you put in the job. So you don't earn minimal wage in terms of what you earn per hour because of the very high number of hours. Challenges of the job. Interestingly enough, they find relationships with clients and restaurants, especially restaurants, difficult. And they find relationships with platforms difficult, but it's a minority of them. A majority of them are okay with the relationships with the other stakeholders, the clients, the restaurants, the platforms. But what they really find as a problem is that there are too many gig workers, so too many of them available. And that's really a result of the COVID pandemic. Too many workers trying to get the gigs. And another big issue is high safety risks. Road accidents. Many of them have had accidents. On the positive side, many of these gig workers enjoy the independence. They love not being employees because they can work whenever they want. Okay? So the key point of this type of job in Paris is the independence. Road safety is a big concern. 25% have experienced accidents. And that's a high number for any type of professional sector. Okay, my last point, and then if you want, I can take questions in Spanish or in English, or in French, of course, if you want to, in the chat or in, I don't know how Gaston will organize the questions. But my last point before the questions will be a little bit about real estate. You have all these new activities in instant delivery. You have all these new workers, tens of thousands of jobs, many, many deliveries, lots of new transportation modes, new mopeds, cars, bicycles, making deliveries. So it's a new big market. It does have impact on real estate and buildings and urban planning in cities. So you have dark kitchens, you have dark stores, you have logistics micro hubs, you have micro fulfillment centers. All these names are new and they come from this new business of the instant deliveries. So I will just give you a few photos and a few things about this real estate, and then we can go to the questions. So dark kitchens are areas where the restaurants are not open for the public. They are making meals. It's actually a big business today, especially in Europe. So for example, this is the example of Frischti, which is one of these instant deliveries specialized in France. They have 3 dark kitchens in the suburbs, and they have 10 hubs in Paris. Between the meals are prepared in the suburban areas, in the dark kitchens, and then they are brought to the hubs. And then the delivery couriers are taking the meals from the hubs. So they have to set up the dark kitchens and they have to set up the hubs. Okay, so it's a big business today because these companies, delivery editions, kits, cloud kitchens, are actually specializing as providers of these hubs for preparing the meals. And that's the example of cloud kitchens. They are focused on these new dark ghost kitchens. So it's a new sort of real estate business, setting up the dark kitchens. Again, that's Frischti. I showed you the example of Frischti. 3 large dark kitchens in the suburban areas, 10 hubs in the city center. Okay, now dark stores and micro hubs. It's slightly different. It's not for meals, it's for products, grocery products, or any other type of parcels. But to deliver these products very quickly, you need dark stores, which are urban warehouses used as a sort of very small fulfillment terminal for fast grocery deliveries. Okay? One company like Gorillas will have about 10 dark stores in Paris today. So they need to find the spaces, right? Other companies making fast deliveries of parcels or groceries are using micro hubs in city centers. All these new areas, these new spaces, these new hubs need to be located inside city centers. And there's not much space. It's very difficult to find real estate at low cost. So they are using former retail stores. They are using recycled urban spaces, such as underground car parks or even gas stations. Here you see the example of a gas station in Paris that will be turned into a logistics fast delivery hub. It's in the process right now, it's in the works. Former gas station turned into logistics, fast delivery. And only cargo cycles will get out of this micro hub. This is another example in Paris. That's below the Périphérique, which is a very big highway just around the city center. There was nothing here, just empty space, very noisy, very ugly. Today, it has been turned into a very sophisticated, a very sophisticated warehouse for cargo cycle logistics. It's in operation. It was opened a few months ago. Okay, so from nothing, an empty space, into a sophisticated micro hub for logistics and fast deliveries. That's for fresh groceries. So many other examples all over Europe for that type of recycling spaces for instant deliveries. I just will go quickly over my slides just to give you a few other photographs. That's in Brooklyn. It's a fully automated micro fulfillment center for fast delivery of groceries. And the last word about another type of facility for deliveries is the Maison des Coursiers, La Casa de los Riders in Paris. It's a sort of network of shelters or break rooms set up by the municipality of Paris and a network of cooperatives to offer shelter to workers for the instant deliveries, coffee, restroom, showers, of course, plugs for charging their smartphones, everything that they need to have a more decent life when they are making deliveries in Paris. So it's an interesting new development, and that's set up by the municipality of Paris. Okay, so my conclusion on on-demand instant delivery is new formats emerging very quickly, lots of innovations. It's really part of the urban freight tech, urban logistics tech. Instant deliveries is a key part of this new area of innovations in deliveries and city logistics. The pandemic has acted as an accelerator, new consumption behaviors, many more demographics using smartphone apps to get their goods. Okay, very important accelerator because of COVID. It's still a small market share, but it's growing very quickly. The business model is a work in progress. As you saw, they are making a lot of losses. They're not making profit yet. So the business models have to adapt constantly through partnerships and through mergers and through continued access to capital. Huge creation of urban jobs, huge problems with image and reputation because of the way the working contracts are organized. And I told you a lot about litigation. So just about these labor force, quick conclusion, huge turnovers of delivery couriers. That's also a big problem for the platforms. They have to train again many people all the time because these people don't stay much in the job. Emerging issues, I told you a lot about legal issues over contracts, increased illegal work and documented vulnerable workers. At the same time, I really think this new market is an opportunity for low-skilled jobs in city centers. And there's a huge potential for further training and education for these people to get into the freight logistics more regular market. Opportunities for innovation, such as the use of new modes, it can be seen as a good thing because these people can use many more different modes as before, and increase in development of socially responsible platforms. Thank you very much. I will stop here.
Muchas gracias, Leticia. Pues la verdad es que la presentación que nos has hecho nos deja pues una gran impresión porque nos damos cuenta de que es un tema con muchas variables y al mismo tiempo también con bastantes áreas para seguir desarrollando. Me llama la atención cómo, por ejemplo, las plataformas. Hace algunos años leí un artículo en Le Monde Diplomatique que hablaba sobre justamente la precarización del empleo en las entregas, pero ahora es interesante ver cómo lo usan desde el punto de vista de marketing, el hecho de decir que, bueno, van a portarse mejor y van a tener una mejor relación social, digamos, ¿no? Otra de las dinámicas que hemos visto recientemente en México es el tema de las Ghost Kitchen, que también está generando pues una aglomeración de aplicaciones para las entregas, ¿no? Y en este sentido se habla de que ahora la parte de gestión de la movilidad en zona urbana está en manos, vamos a decir, de los algoritmos, porque hay tantas plataformas, ¿no?, que están por ahí rodando. Quiero decirte que esta presentación que nos has hecho favor de dar se está transmitiendo a través de varias redes sociales y entonces por ahí, Ana Bricia Galindo, a quien tú seguramente por ahí has conocido en algunos intercambios, ella me ha hecho favor de darle seguimiento a redes sociales y por ahí parece que hay una pregunta que se ha repetido y es la que queremos hacerte el día de hoy. Por cuestiones de tiempo, pues solamente te haremos esta pregunta. Pero bueno, adelante, Ana Bricia, por favor.
Muchas gracias, doctor Gastón. Y mucho gusto y muchas gracias por estar con nosotros, doctora Leticia. La pregunta es la siguiente. Con el aumento de las entregas instantáneas, tenemos un mayor número de vehículos en las calles, especialmente bicicletas y motocicletas, algo que no estaba considerado anteriormente en los modelos de transporte o en el flujo de los vehículos. Entonces, ¿qué acciones usted considera que las ciudades o países en desarrollo pueden tomar en cuenta para proteger y apoyar a este nuevo miembro de la cadena de suministro, buscando que la movilidad para todos sea mejor?
Well, you have the national level and the local level. I think the national level can do a lot. And I like the French way of trying to discuss with the platforms so that they give more benefits to the workers. The US way is more litigation and legislation. And the Spanish way is a lot of legislation on obliging the platforms to change the work. So I'm not sure this is the right way because it goes too far and the platforms are just leaving the countries. So I think that developing countries may have more difficulty in setting up a discussion with the platforms, but they have to try. So that the national level, okay, discussions at the high level. At the local level, as you said, there's a lot of issues related to traffic. So I think they have to collect better data on delivery traffic by motorbikes. I mean, it's impressive in Sao Paulo, in Mexico, in Lima, the number of motorbikes making deliveries today. It has an impact on emissions, pollution, noise, and accidents, right? And congestion. So you have to collect data and make better modeling tools, integrating deliveries by motorbikes. That's a key point. And then you have many other things to do in terms of protecting, making roads more safe for bicycles that are using cargo containers, for example, or enforcing the laws on speed for motorbikes and electric bicycles, setting up bike lanes for cargo bikes and bicycles, etc. But I think at the beginning, the key point is to make this data collection and modeling tools very important to assess, monitor traffic and environmental impacts of this new activity in cities, as you said.
Muchísimas gracias, Leticia. Pues mira, si nos permites, la información que ahorita nos compartiste de los enlaces donde tú estás dirigiendo investigaciones, lo vamos a difundir también por las redes sociales para que la gente se entere mejor. Y la verdad, te soy sincero, me quedé con las dudas del Hotel Logistics que hacen con ¿cómo se llama? Con Sollaris. Hay, bueno, una infinidad de cuestiones interesantes, pero bueno, seguramente después habrá oportunidad de conversar. Te agradecemos bastante. Para nosotros ha sido un orgullo que pudieras estar con nosotros el día de hoy. Y bueno, seguramente, si tú nos lo permites, pues estaremos en contacto para continuar la conversación. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Gracias y adiós a todos.
Gracias.